when I see these numbers dropping off, I'm like, hey, are you living comfortably? Because the whole idea with property investing is you're having a sustainable and a comfortable life, right? The idea is not to live frugally, to build a life in retirement, because one thing COVID has taught us is your retirement could be tomorrow. Because that's how life is. It's so unpredictable. It can get very frustrating for people who have very little patience, and it is a game of, managing frustration at your end and still looking at the bright side and making sure that, you're still going. And you would always find agents who are super silly, or, who you wake up, get into a new day, and you basically build more relationships, right? Co-living properties can generate almost $140,000 in passive income and net of $40,000 in passive income after mortgage repayments, and they sit in an average yield of about 10%. Hello and welcome to another episode of Help Me Buy Property podcast. Today's conversation is a conversation looking inside Investor Partner Group. We have our senior property acquisition specialist here today, Luke, who's going to talk about a day of a life of a property acquisition specialist. What does it take for a property acquisition specialist to find the deal that we find for our clients? How much stress does he go through on a day-to-day basis? How much stress do I put him on a day-to-day basis? And also, what sort of deals is he working on, and what sort of deals has he acquired over the last, 2 to 3 weeks? So let's, drum roll to bring in Luke. Luke, how are you today?
Yeah, good. Nice. Thanks for having me. Just looking at properties again.
Amazing. And look, I miss being on the ground. I still am on the ground, but I miss being really on the ground, talking to the real estate agents on a day-to-day basis. I still do come in on some of the tough deals, but talk to me about your property journey first before we go down the path of the role, and how does your day looks like on an average daily basis?
Yeah, so me and my partner, Sarah, we've acquired 3 deals this year, one being a PPLR and 2 investments. Yeah. One of those investments is down in the Bunbury market, WA.
Amazing.
And the second investment's over in Queensland.
Amazing. Yeah. And so this is like, property is not new to you, although I see it this way, that you've almost restarted your property portfolio. You've done a lot of work. Your background is as an electrician. So you understand property on the day-to-day basis. You understand what it takes for you to look for property now, going through those property development side of things, or the transactions that you've been part of. So when you entered into the acquisition space, what does your normal day looks like?
Yeah, so it's, acquisition is all about really relationship building. So it's a lot of calling agents. It's high volume, but it can't be transactional. You need to try and establish relationships with as many people as you can. That's super important, and that's actually a rewarding part of the job. Once you get a good connection with an agent, and do a few deals with them, that you've got that, bit of rapport there. Yeah. And then obviously that helps you access better deals down the road, and then you just try and scale that throughout the different areas that you're looking at working.
And how many deals on average you would look at before, you finalize a single deal for a client?
Yeah. So that's like most of us are trying to do, 30 to 40 calls a day to agents.
Yeah.
If we can close 1 to 2 deals a week each, if you work that out, we're making a lot of calls.
Yeah.
But, you probably look at 50, 60 deals.
Yeah.
And you might narrow that down to 10 that make the cut, go through the due diligence phase, and make sure that they make sense. And then from those 10, you might put offers in on 3 and then get 1 deal over the line.
Yeah.
So it's
a lot of hard work, right? I think a lot of people tend to almost downplay this when you're talking about like 40 to 50 calls a day over a period of, and, majority of the times you're working 6 days, because Saturday is one of the, hottest days for us because everything. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like almost 250 to 300 calls in a week, or 300 conversations in a week.
Sure.
Assessing 60 properties for closing a single property. That's a ton of work.
Yeah, it's high volume, man.
Yeah.
Volume. So you got to have an interest in wanting to build relationships. Like I said, that calling 300 agents is all good, but if you're not getting some form of relationship or connection with those agents, it's all a waste of time. So
yeah.
And as you would know, eventually you start to pick up these really good relationships, and it means that call volume can come down after a period of time.
100%.
And you still get deals. You still get good deals.
Definitely.
So,
and how aggressive is the negotiations?
Depends on what deal you're working on, I suppose. Some properties we can get over the line quite easily. I mean,
because you have that relationship with the agent, because they know that he's not going to take this anywhere else.
Correct. Yeah. Most of the off-market deals, the negotiations a little bit easier because you got less competition on the deal. So, obviously we buy a lot of off-market deals.
Yeah.
So we prefer to do that. It's less work for us.
Yeah.
Easier to get a deal over the line, a good deal for the client.
Yeah.
You can usually lock in a cheaper price.
I still remember this one particular deal that comes into my mind, where we had the vendor locked in for a particular deal, and this particular client that, wanted the property went directly to the agent and, tried closing the property directly. And I did remember having that conversation with you and saying, I think that she's not going to get it because you have such an amazing relationship with the agent. He's not going to give it to her directly anyway.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's, it definitely comes back to relationship, and it's, the more deals you continue to do with people, the more you have that relationship there, and you tend to get access to a lot of their, more better deals. But it takes time. It's a lot of volume. So you got to enjoy talking to people.
Yes. And on market, off market, right? I think that's a massive conversation that always happens in the buyer's agency world. I have the view of the world that, whether a deal is on market or off market, regardless, if you're paying a fair price and it's in the right location, it ticks all the boxes and it has the due diligence attached to it, then it does not really matter. But, talk from a client's perspective, they're always sort of very focused on, hey, it needs to be an off-market deal and does not need to be an on-market deal.
Yeah, it seems to be easy to pitch an off-market deal to someone, just a perceived difference. It's like there's a difference in the two types of deals.
Yeah.
But if you're comparing an on-market and off-market deal and they're all ticking the boxes, financially, the numbers make all sense and due diligence checks out, there's not really a difference in the asset at all. The only difference is off markets, you can tend to try and negotiate down a little bit easier, whereas the negotiation tends to be a little tougher when you're on market.
Yes.
Prices seem to get pushed up a little bit quicker.
Correct. Yeah.
We've found some pretty great on market deals as well. So it's not, they don't all have to be.
What's the most craziest acquisition that you've done so far? The most craziest deal that you've done?
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind is that Waikiki deal that I found. I think we closed out at 610, and I think the bank val came in at like 690.
Yeah,
it's like a pretty big difference. There's a bit of work that needed to be done on the property. I think the client put in 10, 15.
Yeah,
that's
still worth
quite below market value. In a hot market.
Yes,
WA is a pretty crazy market. It still is, but even back then it was hotter. That was a good deal. We found some good deals down in Bunbury. We've achieved 40 to 50K under market value down there in some areas. I think that Waikiki one was a fun one because it was actually quite a interesting deal to try and close out and settle. The vendor was quite tricky to deal with.
Mm.
And I was trying to keep the relationship strong with the agent. I could understand they were also struggling with the vendor.
Mm.
So it was a matter of just us two trying to work together. Obviously, me representing our client, and the agent trying to represent the client, their client, but they weren't really coming to the party.
Yeah.
We tried to settle. If nothing was ready to settle, it's just sort of, that's a big part of being a buyer's agent. It's not so much just about finding the deal.
Mm.
There's a whole back process, the back end of it, making sure that the building pair stacks up, trying to negotiate that.
Yes.
The contract's all fine.
Yeah.
And then settling the property to make sure we're not passing on a deal to the client that
Definitely
something wrong.
Yeah. And you can do a lot of work and, it can basically fall off anywhere, right? So
For me, I think a month ago, I spent a whole week on a deal.
Yeah.
Multiple hours on the phone to the agent.
Mm.
Client was happy with the property, looking forward to it, and the agent backed out.
Yeah.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book, it's easy to read, it has a lot of stories, it has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book.
It's so annoying, right? The vendor basically decides or realizes that, they're selling the deal of the century, probably. I remember, one time it happened to me as well. And this is a while back now, where I signed the deal for a client. And it was a good deal. It was during this time, actually. It was December. So we signed a deal with a January settlement or end of January settlement. So there was a bit of time. And the market moved quite significantly at the settlement. And this was a learning for me as well. So the market moved quite significantly, and the vendor realizes that, he sold the property at least $100,000 cheaper. And so he refuses to settle. He's like, I'm not going to settle. I was like, huh? And this was in Adelaide. And so there was a contract in place where he had to pay no penalty for
a special condition they added.
No, there was no special condition. It was a plain contract, but there was no penalty interest or anything. It was one of those contracts where there was no penalty interest. And I've never seen a vendor failing settlement. You're selling, right? So it's very strange for them to, fail in the settlement. And so he backed out and said, I'm not going to settle. I'm going to wait. And my client is like, so what do we do? And I was like, well, we hold him till he die because, and this property would keep growing in value. And so you don't have to pay any out of pocket and you still have the property under your name and you still bank. Yeah, it's a great outcome. So I was like, well, I want one of those deals. So I'm going to. And so this is the conversation that I had with, and this was one of the direct to vendor deals where we were talking directly to the vendor.
Yeah.
And so I said to him point blank, I'm going to hold this property till you die. So I'm never going to basically let the contract go. Yeah. Anyway, so he was point blank. He's like, oh, you've got a good deal out of me and blah, rah. Anyways, the client was, of course, people do get emotional and they're like, no, we want to settle. We don't want to be in this transaction forever. Yeah. And so this is the trick that we ended up doing. We got the conveyancer sending them a reminder notice. And apparently in the contract, the conveyancer could send them a settlement reminder notice and charge a reasonable amount of fees. And that fees was, I think, $120 that we came up with. Yeah. And he was sending a reminder notice every second day. And so it was like $240 every 2 days that he was raking up on the conveyancing fees. And the first week went through and it was 5 reminders sent out to him. That's $1,000 a week. And then he realizes that what these people are doing, they're basically raking up $1,000 a week on reminder notices. That is basically your damages, right? That they're claiming. It still took him like 2 months to settle.
That's crazy.
But it was just like, I can understand, right? Vendors do get nervous and they do put out of some of these deals.
Yeah, they do. It's definitely a balancing act, and you got to be a little bit careful the way you go through deals. You want to, a good deal is something that, obviously the buying side, we want the deal to work for our clients. But I think a good successful deal is where it works for, somewhat both parties.
100%. It's a win of win, you're right?
Yeah, and you tend to find the deals go through much easier if like everyone's happy. So I think that's the way it should go. Sometimes, a lot of the time it doesn't work like that. But
yes.
Try.
And I think that's what's important. Like a good negotiation is where both parties are winning.
Yeah.
That's that way, it's a clean and simple deal, right? And that's how you build a relationship and the rapport with the agent as well, so that they'll keep bringing you deals as well in the future. What sort of support do you have available around you when you are basically, going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, trying to find various different deals?
Yeah. So, the IPG team are obviously great. Harrison's very supportive. You're very supportive.
Am I?
Having that kind of team around you, which just means that when you come back fresh, you just, strong off the line. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Great team. And obviously, we've got lots of processes in the background support us to be able to do our job much more efficiently. The processes are really strong, and I know there's new things we're trying to implement, weekly.
Yeah.
To make the process better for the client and also make it easy for us as well.
Definitely.
So that's obviously an evolving thing that will continue to evolve forever. I imagine it's the way business is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good team to be in. That's for sure.
Yeah. What's your aspirations around, you being in property? Not just like, your career aspirations, but also your personal aspirations.
Yeah, we had a passive income target, I think, when we first came into investing, and we're trying to hit it, 150,000 a year passive. I'm obviously reasonably new to the IPG team. Now my focus is on acquisition. We're still building the portfolio out. Obviously, that's always going to be important because I have an obsession with property. But yeah, the passive income target will happen. It's just earn the money through the jobs and then funnel back property, while also trying to maintain our lifestyle, which isn't overly expensive. We don't have kids, but we also manage our finances meticulously. So we still enjoy life pretty well. And I think Sarah remember this when we came into as a client initially. We put our finances into the game plan.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure you called us, said that our spending was below the poverty line.
Yeah.
So like we were spending that little amount of money that we were like, we need to increase it.
Yeah.
But we still live like we.
I still remember asking that question. Are you living on big baked beans and spaghetti or something?
Yeah. We're out for dinners a lot.
Yeah. And it's amazing. I think, like I'm in that privileged position where I see so many different portfolios and profiles every day. And so, I have thresholds of, 30 to 40% of your person's income is, spent towards, their discretionary, non-discretionary expenses, for example, if they have kids. And so when I see, these numbers, dropping off, I'm like, hey, are you living comfortably? Because the whole idea with property investing is, having a sustainable and a comfortable life, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Not stretching yourself to the point where, you can't afford to eat.
Yeah. Or living on baked beans, right? The idea is not to live frugally to build a life in retirement, because one thing COVID has taught us is your retirement could be tomorrow because that's how life is. It's so unpredictable, right? Sure. So, yeah. What would be, some last words of wisdom for people who are transitioning into the buyer's agent role?
Yeah, I suppose I feel like you've really got to like property to be a buyer's agent. You got to love property because it is high volume. Like we were chatting about, it's a lot of work. So if you don't have a real solid passion for property, and I suppose there's a difference between thinking that and then actually having a passion for it.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of people out there that think they love property, but when they have to do 300 calls a week and try and connect with a bunch of agents to get deals over the line, you got to love it.
Yes.
But it's obviously very achievable for someone that loves it. And, it's a rewarding career. It's rewarding to be able to find properties for other people and help them, achieve their goals as well.
Yeah.
But, other advice would be that do as much education as you can. A always try and educate yourself in the background and get the advice from the right people.
Definitely.
With bad information out there. And I was mentioning this to Sarah the other day. It's like, I thought I knew a lot about property coming in to the role.
Yeah.
Once you start to actually be in the acquisition space and real estate industry, it's
so much more.
Yeah. Well, there's so many more data points to look at.
Yes.
There's so many properties that I would have thought may have been good deals. That shrinks down to like 2% of what I thought, there's not that many properties that are worth buying.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, it's you learn a lot. That a lot of the information out there is not really that accurate.
Yeah.
So definitely listen to the right people.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about patience?
Patience?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have some patience. Yeah. Well, I mean, especially when you're working a deal for a whole week and then all that work goes out the window because for some reason someone doesn't want to sell the property. And you've got contracts signed and whatnot, but like you just can't let that get to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It can get very frustrating for people who have very little patience, and it is a game of, managing frustration at your end and still looking at the bright side and making sure that, you're still going. And you would always find agents who are, super silly or, who piss you off on that particular day. But you wake up, you get into a new day and you basically build more relationships, right? So
it's an interesting, like the relationships you have with agents. A lot of you can have some very heated discussions.
Yeah.
But real estate agents understand as much as we do. Like you can have a heated discussion. 10 minutes later, you can still do the deal.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
100%.
It's just a way of negotiating. Like they want something, you want something different.
Yeah.
Like battle it out for a little bit.
Yeah.
You can still get a contract signed.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think one of the key lessons is the art of negotiation. So you could be an amazing person on finding the good deals, but if you can't close it, or if you can't negotiate that deal out, or if you can't build a reputation, then that deal is just on a piece of paper that doesn't do anything. So
yeah, you just look at endless deals and never close anything.
Correct. Yeah. And that's a lot of frustration that a lot of people feel because they're not comfortable jumping on a call and having those conversations. So yeah. Thank you for coming out today. This was amazing. This was awesome. For people who are out there looking for career paths or career changes into buyer's agency world, we do have Australian Property Academy, so do tap in and have a look and see as to what is available out there. We are always growing. So as Luke said, if you are looking for, pathway towards buyer's agency or pathway into acquisition, we have multiple parts of our business that are always looking for people to come in and help and join. So, do feel to reach out. If you are a buyer's agent and if you have stories of your own, or if you're a client who've done, their own acquisitions and you have your own story, please do share on socials. And thank you for listening to us today. Take care. Stay safe. Keep smiling. Keep investing. This is Luke and Moss checking out. Adios.
Thanks, Moss.